Hey, what's up YouTube? Ronix with yet another tutorial, and in this tutorial today I want to show you guys how to edit your outdoor portraits and how to color grade them in just Photoshop. So this is not going to include any capture one. It is going to be majorly a Photoshop tutorial and how you should edit your full portraits in Photoshop. So as you can see, I've opened my image already into my camera raw filter, and these are the settings I used for this very image. If at all I'm to click, you can see I use the Canon 6D camera and I'm using camera raw 12.4, that's the version. And the brief settings about this image, you can see how I shot this image. Basically, I had my 120 centimeter softbox right on this right hand side. You can see it right above here, and the settings were, I shot it at 2.8 using 85mm at ISO 100 and 640th of a second, as you can see right there. So you want to see and learn about how to edit your outdoor and color grade them. So usually for these full portraits or full images, or for this very shoot, I already edited some images from this shoot. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the color profile first to landscape. But usually when you turn it to landscape, you're going to notice that the image is going to turn out to look oversaturated, as you can see in this image. So I'm going to first of all do the basic adjustments to it, then I can reduce on the saturation or the vibrance later on. So I'm going to simply drop down the highlights because I want to regain the details in the dress, and it is the advantage of shooting in RAW. So I'd advise you guys to always shoot in RAW, because I wouldn't have gotten back these blown out highlights in this very image. Then also going to come and drop knock in my whites to get back the dynamic range maybe in the sky of this image. Yeah, I'm also going to pull in my blacks slightly and also knock up my shadows a little bit. So since I have magentas in this image, you can see in the skin tones of the model, and that is an issue with Canon. I prefer to reduce on the magentas like that. But as I told you, the image gets saturated when you change the color profile into landscape. So depending on the camera profile you shoot in, you always have to select it from right here. So I shot in landscape, that's why I selected landscape, just the picture profile. So I'm going to come right to the vibrance and I'm going to knock down on the vibrance like that. So when I knock it down, you're going to notice that the image has turned out to look less saturated. And I'm also going to knock my saturation down a little bit. Then come up to my clarity and just pull it in, or knock it up, and also come to the exposure and just increase on the exposure of this image. And I think we are good to go. So I'm just going to hit open, and I'm going to open the image into Photoshop for further skin retouching and further color grading. So usually my first step for color grading is in the camera raw, then I do retouch and also go back to camera raw to do some further more retouching. So I usually want to crop the images in a ratio of 4:5 because I want to get rid of this softbox right above there. So I'm going to select my crop tool and come to the ratio of 4:5 or 8:10 and just move this until I feel like I am having a good crop ratio, and I'm going to hit enter on the keyboard. So this is the image we want to retouch and color grade even more. So first of all, I want to clean up this image or remove this stand from the image. So I'm going to create a duplicate of the background there by hitting Ctrl or Command J. I'm going to get my spot healing brush tool and I'm going to increase it by using the brackets on the keyboard like that. And I'm going to just simply paint over this stand to get rid of it. I know it is going to do a pretty nice job to try and fix that or remove the stand, and yeah, it has done a really nice job. So let's just try. I took this image, it was kind of raining, so that's why you can see we have some kind of water in the background. So I think we are done with that. So let's do some little bit of cleanup on the skin. So I'm going to zoom in by holding down Ctrl or Command plus. And since this model really has a nice and beautiful skin, we're going to be doing less of the cleaning up or removal of the blemishes and skin imperfections from her face. So I think this is okay. And let's just clean up these hands like that. I think we are done with that. So I'm going to merge these two layers, and let me not merge them because I want you guys to understand each and every step for my skin retouching. So I'm basically not going to merge these layers. I'm going to simply create a new layer from layer 1 by hitting Ctrl or Command J, and since we're going to be using frequency separation, we just need two layers apart from the background layer. So I'm going to name this layer low frequency, and I'm going to name the upper layer high frequency. So when you do that, you're going to notice that the low frequency usually contains our colors and the skin tones, and the high frequency usually contains the textures. So we're going to deactivate the high frequency layer and select the low frequency layer. So what we want to do, we want to first of all blur out or remove the skin textures from the image so that we can remain with only the colors in the image. And in order to do that, you guessed it right, come to filter and come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So when you come to this step, always you shouldn't actually cram these figures because you have to zoom into the image, for example the face, and look for the area that has more skin textures than the rest of the image. So I think for this case, we're going to go with the face. So we want to move this radius until we start losing out on the details in the face of this very model. So I'm just going to move until around 4. I think at around 4 I've lost out on most of the details in the face. And now the image is kind of looking blurry. So you shouldn't also cram this radius. I always get questions about the radius I use for my frequency separation. Your images are going to be differing, first of all, depending on the focus, the type of camera you use, because if at all you have a camera with bigger or high megapixels, meaning you're going to be getting a very sharp and detailed image, and that implies that you're going to be using a higher radius. And if at all you're using a low-end kind of camera, you're going to be using a low radius. So make sure you don't cram this radius kind of thing. So after doing so, hit OK. And we're going to select the high frequency layer and now activate it. So when you activate it, you're going to notice that the image is going to get back the way it is. So here is where I need your maximum attention. So you can see for this case, we're using a 16-bit image. So the settings for a 16-bit image are basically going to be differing from an 8-bit image settings. So I'm going to be explaining that in a bit. So select the high frequency layer and come to the image and come to apply image. So when you come to apply image, you're going to notice that your image is going to turn into this because your blending mode is in multiply or for whichever case. So that shouldn't even worry you at all. So first of all, we want to select the layer from which you are going to extract the textures. Remember, when you are trying to blur out or remove the textures from this low frequency layer, we kind of hid them somewhere. So we want to steal those textures and apply them onto the high frequency layer. So come and select the low frequency layer and come and change the blending mode to, if at all you're using an 8-bit image, if at all it is an 8-bit image, come and change the blending mode from maybe normal or multiply to subtract. And when you select subtract, make sure your opacity is 100, the scale is 2 and the offset 128, and make sure invert is not checked, and make sure your preview is on. So when you do that and you try to zoom in, you're going to notice that your image is going to be put on this gray kind of layer, and it's going to be containing only the outlines or the textures from the image. So that is for an 8-bit image. And when you're using a 16-bit image, you're going to first of all select the low frequency layer because you're subtracting the textures from this low frequency layer. Then come and change the blending mode from subtract to add, and make sure the opacity is 100, the scale is 2, and offset 0, and make sure you check or invert this kind of layer and you get the textures, the same results like we had for an 8-bit image. And now click OK. And when you do that, come and change the blending mode from normal to a linear light to get back the image the way it was looking initially before. So we're going to put these two in a group by hitting or selecting both by clicking, holding down the Control button or command and hitting Control or command G to put them in a group. We're going to name this group frequency separation, like that. So we're going to create a black and white layer on top of the high frequency layer. I'm going to be explaining that also in a bit. So select the high frequency layer and come to the adjustments and select black and white, and come to the red channel and just darken it. So you have to darken it until you're looking at the skin textures vividly or well enough, and just close this. So the reason for doing this is because we want to see the uneven skin textures that we wouldn't have seen when the image was in the colored form. So that's why we have to create a help layer, or a layer that is going to help us see the uneven skin tones in the image. So come and just activate it. So since we are dealing with the skin tones, you have to come and select the layer that is containing only the skin tones in the image. So that for this case, it is the low frequency layer. Then you're going to come to under the brushes and simply right click. And when you right click and select the Mixturebrush tool. So after selecting the Mixturebrush tool, you can now set up the Mixturebrush tool so that it can blend the image really well. So you can come and select and clean the brush, select clean brush, and select this second option so that the brush is cleaned automatically when you're trying to harmonize or blend the skin tones in the image. So we are going to select a wetness of 9%, the load is 75%, the mix is 90, and the flow 100. Make sure sample all layers is not checked or selected because we are only going to be working on the low frequency layer. And now you can zoom in slightly to the face, since this is a full body portrait, and you can start blending. And when you're blending, make sure you blend the midtones alone, the highlights alone in the image, and the shadows alone basically. So just blend like that. You can see the way I'm moving my brush is in a way that I am just trying to harmonize those tones or the transitions in the skin tones area. So reduce on the size and come to the nose area and just harmonize or blend the shadows right on the right hand side, and come to the left hand side and do the same for those tones. And now do that and just continue blending or harmonizing these tones using the Mixturebrush tool, like that. I hope you guys are learning and understanding each and every step I am undertaking while retouching a full body portrait. So let's see a before and after so far. This is the before after. It is not too much and we still have the details in the image. So we're going to come to the neck area and turn back the black and white, and always make sure you're blending while you're selected on the low frequency layer, and just come and just harmonize or blend. So we're going to come all the way down to the hands and also blend and harmonize the skin tones on the hand of the model, like that. I hope you're seeing and understanding each and every step being undertaken for this very portrait or outdoor portrait. So after this, we are going to simply come to the color grading shortly. So stick around and don't miss out on the major emphasis of this very tutorial. So I think we are done harmonizing and blending the tones in the image. So turn off the black and white and you can see the before after. if at all I zoom in, before, after, if at all you look at the hands, you can see that there is a difference and it is not really overdone. So we're going to select the black and white and actually delete it. So for my full body portraits, usually I either use the Mixturebrush tool alone and leave it at that. So that is what I'm basically going to do. So when you're done blending or harmonizing, the next step you would love to do, and since you have not distorted on the shape of the model's face by just using a Mixturebrush tool, we are not going to be doing dodging and burning. So we're going to kick straight into the color grading process. So we're going to come to selective color, and first of all we are going to add some blacks to the image like that, to around 5. Then come to the yellows and just go with around -8. So you can see the before and after so far, because I love this kind of cinematic kind of feel to the image. Then I'm going to create a stamp visible layer by hitting Shift alternate Command E on the keyboard, or Shift alternate Control E on the keyboard, and I'm going to duplicate that by hitting Control or Command J. So when I do that, I'm going to come to filter and I'm going to come to the camera filter to do the eye whitening and further color grading. So usually for my very first step of color grading, I come all the way down to the calibration option. Then I'm going to reduce on the saturation of the reds to around -6, and also come to my greens and also knock it to around -3. And usually depending on how the look you're going in for your image, so for the blue primary, I'm just going to leave it to around that. I'm going to leave it to around 2. So you can see the before and after. We have just gotten rid of the magentas in the image. Then I'm going to come all the way up to this image, and I'm going to click on the eyes because I want to whiten the eyes of this model. So hold down Ctrl or Command plus, and you can zoom in. Come and get the adjustment brush tool rather, and come and set it up, because since we have some yellow color in the eyes, come the temperatures and go to the opposite of yellow, and that is blue. So we're going to go with around 30 for this case, since it is a full body image or portrait, and go with this a tint of around 63. Since we want the eyes to pop, we're going to go with a highlight of 5, and whites, we are going to go with around 4. And since we have color in the white area of the eye, we are going to simply go to the saturation and just knock it down to around -64, and start painting over the white, all the whites of the eye. So you have to only paint over only and only on the whites of the eye. I hope you're seeing this. So hit Ctrl or Command minus, and you're going to go back into Photoshop, and you can do some furthermore color grading. So hit OK, and now you can see the before and after, before, after. You have kind of muted this image. So we're going to come back to selective color, and you're going to come to the reds, and you're going to just push in our yellows slightly, and also come to the brightness and contrast and just push in our contrast around 2. I think this image is now looking awesome and beautiful. So let's see what we have done for skin retouching and color grading for this very image, and we see if at all we have done a really nice job. You can see this is where we started and this is where we are. So I hope you guys have loved this very tutorial, and if at all you have learned something, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If at all you are watching from this channel for the very first time, I'm Ronix from Ronix Photography. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in yet more tutorials on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.